Hi guys, welcome back to the Swim with Dan Technique Tuesday drill series. This week is going to be the final block of this drill series, and from next week we'll do a recap of all of the 7 drills that we've covered and how to utilize them in your training. And after that we'll be switching to a Technique Tuesday equipment series, talking about how to utilize each piece of swimming equipment, why it's needed, and how to use it, how to implement it into your training. This week's drill is going to be the freestyle thumb to hip drill, sometimes called a hip tap or a thumb brush. It's a tactile drill. It's designed to fix one of the most common hidden speed killers in freestyle, which is the short finish or finishing your stroke too early / not pulling all the way through. So it's a focal point drill, so it's a drill that just gives you a cue of when to start the next phase. So with this drill, you want to do your pull as normal, and you ensure that your hip lightly touches your thigh, side of your hip, at the end of every pull, just before your hand exits the water into the recovery. So in terms of the focal point, you do your pull as normal. The only difference is you make sure that that thumb touches the hip on the same side. When that happens, that means that your arm's back in parallel with the body, and that's the very end of the stroke. So why do we use this? It's going to help you to maximize your stroke length. So lots of times we talk about the reach and rotation, distance per stroke, and the catch. And when we do that, everyone knows to maximize the stroke length to the front, but it's also important to maximize your stroke length to the back. So you're using the arm, that paddle, giving it the biggest leverage possible. You're using those natural levers to pull as much water as possible, as far out in front as you can and as far to the back as you can, while still maintaining good technique. So many swimmers pull their hand out of the water too early near the waist, missing out on the most powerful part of the stroke, the tricep extension. So that final flick finish, once you've managed to reach, catch, get hold of the water and pull it, that final bit of the stroke should be a push. So you've pulled the water right from the very front down your body, and that final tricep extension push back to the hip is what finishes that stroke off and actually sends all of the water you've grabbed down and back. If we don't do that, we're missing out on the most important part of the stroke and the part that will give you the most propulsion. So the final 20% of the stroke, which is that tricep extension, provides a massive amount of forward thrust. By brushing the hip, you make sure you're completing that full flick at the back. It helps to fix short stroking, so preventing the habit of rushing or rushing the recovery. We don't end up with choppy, inefficient strokes and rhythm. And tactile feedback. So unlike many drills that require you to feel the water, this gives you a physical touch point or a cue, so you know exactly when you've done it right. So as soon as you feel that thumb glance the hip, you know that you've done that, and you can go straight into the recovery because you've completed that full pull. So how do we perform it? We swim normal freestyle. As our arm moves through the push phase, we want to keep our palm facing back, so our palm's always facing the way we've came, or the wall behind us, our palm to feet. Those are some cues you might hear. The brush should ensure the thumb makes light contact with your swimsuit or hip bone as the arm straightens right at the very end of the stroke. The exit, so only once you feel that tap do you then lift the elbow and start your recovery. And the focus, don't force a hard hit against the body. It should be a glancing touch that feels smooth and rhythmic. So the goal's not to sort of hit yourself in the hip. It's just as you're pulling through that pull phase and you're starting to transition into that push tricep extension, that you just gently glance the hip on the way through, just to make sure that you're finishing that stroke off right to the very back of the stroke. You're getting the most out of those arms, and to make sure that we're actually pulling from A to B and we're not going across our body inside the center line or outside of shoulder width. We're pulling from A to B, straight out shoulder width in front, straight back behind. So where to utilize this in our sets? So in our endurance sets, when you start to get tired, fatigue can make you end up shortening your stroke and losing that technique. So the hip tap just acts as a checklist to make sure you keep your efficiency high even when you're feeling tired. So if you feel the technique slipping, you feel like you're not really moving in the water, you feel that fatigue building up, I'm going to do a couple of lengths just where I'm tapping my hip, because it's not a very disruptive drill. Like I said, it just gives you a focal point, a little cue. And it can just is a quick and easy way of bringing everything back in line. In the swim down, so it's a great way to re-establish being nice and long and lean mechanics after a hard set. So making sure that even on the swim down, we're not turning into sloppy swimming, we're still keeping our technique really strong. We're not just rushing through the swim down. We're finishing with that skill level really high, ready for the next session. In any strength building set, so if we're using pull buoys, we can use this drill. It allow you to focus entirely on that tricep finish, because it is a pulling drill. So if you're going to do it in conjunction with a pull buoy, you'll get even more benefit of that feel of what it should feel like, more chance to focus on that movement pattern. And in the preset, so we can use it after a single arm drill to integrate the arm movement back into the stroke. So once you've done single arm and you've got a feel for each arm working individually, we then transition back into full stroke. We can use this thumb to hip drill just to keep our focus there and make sure our arms are doing everything properly before we go into the bulk of our main set. Thank you everyone for listening. Any questions, just drop me a message.